All right, Larry said we're ready. All right, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for tonight's City Council work session agenda. So we'll get started for our Monday, February 13th meeting. And the first item will be a roll call here. So City Clerk.
Mayor Boland, Councilmember Clark,
Here.
Councilmember Bartoni, Councilmember Nine,
Here.
Councilmember Farmer,
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Here.
Councilmember Rambo,
Here.
Councilmember Flasher,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Garitano,
Here.
Councilmember Bros,
Here.
Councilmember Edens,
Here.
Councilmember Ottenberg, Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Here.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Here.
Councilmember Hopper, Councilmember Galani.
Thank you. All right, thank you, City Clerk. We will I'll make a couple of announcements here, as you probably are familiar from the past. I'll be officiating tonight's meeting here in the absence of the mayor for tonight. So I will be still representing my ward and will still have the opportunity to vote on behalf of my ward. The only difference with tonight's meeting is that should we have a tie vote, I do not have the authority to break a tie. So if that were the case, then it would likely fail because there would be no way to break it up. So those are all the comments that I have for you tonight. So thanks again for the opportunity to serve here tonight. Look forward to tonight's meeting. And so we're going to now get into welcome. We have Mr. Alex Lawrence here, who is the field representative from the office of Senator Josh Hawley. And would you like to come forward and speak to the council? Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody. I first just wanted to say I'm Alex Lawrence, and I'm a field rep in Senator Josh Hawley's office for the St. Louis region. And just wanted to say, first of all, thank you to the council for the opportunity to come and speak to you all tonight. I know you guys are very busy and have things to do. And so I just appreciate a quick second to, first of all, introduce myself and to just really convey that our office is here to be a resource for both the city and the city of Wildwood, and most importantly, the residents of the city of Wildwood in any way that we can help. The number one way that we're able to do that for the residents of your city and the constituents of ours in Missouri is through our federal casework load. I'm not sure how familiar all of you are with the nature of federal casework, but it really is the number one way that we're able to interface with our constituents and try to get them the help that they need. Most of those issues tend to pop up in Social Security and folks trying to get their pensions in the correct amount or the timely matter, the issues with the IRS and their tax returns, and then issues with passports, issues with our veterans and getting the help that they need from the VA. And so I can really genuinely stand here tonight and tell you that the people that work on our casework team are some of the most servant-hearted, hardworking people that I've met. And so it really is an easy thing to come and talk about, and just to assure you all that the city, the residents in your city, the constituents of ours across the state, when they interact with our office, they're really going to get somebody that is willing to work very hard on their behalf to hopefully get them the help that they need. So I'll leave my cards for sure, probably with Mr. Cross. And, if there's anything that we're able to do for the city and for the residents of Wildwood, please do not hesitate to email or call us. Our information's online as well. We would be happy to be a point of reference or, to provide those services in any ways. I think I can say also, just as a side note, there are a lot of times very good people that work at these federal agencies that want to do a lot of good work with us and on the behalf of constituents. Unfortunately, just the nature of the federal government being so large and the scope being so grand that sometimes things fall through the cracks. And so that's one of the great things about our job, is we get to help try to stand in the cracks for those people and get them the help that they need. So we would love to continue to provide that services and to work with you, the city of Wildwood, as well. So just thank you for having me tonight. I also wanted to say, on a personal note, I was fortunate to be born and raised in the city of Wildwood for the first 15 or 16 years of my life. I went to Fairway Elementary and Wildwood Middle School and have a lot of friends and family that still live in the area. So this is a place that's near and dear to my heart, and it's special to get to come back and speak with you guys tonight. So thank you so much, and I appreciate the time.
Sure. Thank you so much for coming to us tonight. And I do want to see if anyone up here in the dais has anything they'd like to say or ask Representative Councilmember Dodwell.
Would you happen to know what Senator Hawley's top priorities are for the next 6 to 9 months?
Yeah, I mean, I would be happy to speak with you maybe after this or send you anything that we can, but sure. I mean, yeah, I'm here to speak on our casework capabilities, but I know that you know, I work in the St. Louis office, and so we're tracking all sorts of water contamination issues in the St. Louis region and in areas such as that. But yeah.
Looks like I have one more person, Councilmember Edens.
Yes, I would love it if you would connect with staff later. And our chair of admin and public works, we have a bridge replacement that's been slowed down due to multi-jurisdictional permitting, including Park Service. And so we've been told that can take up to 24 months for permitting. And I don't think we really have strong liaisons past state government. And when it's a safety issue, if the wheel can get greased quicker, that would be helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would
Yeah.
love to chat about it.
All right, looks like that's it, but thanks again. Great to see that you have these roots here in Wildwood. It's great to have someone from the city involved. So thank you so much for coming to see us tonight. All right, looks like then we will proceed. I do have one more person, but I don't believe I see them here in the room or if they're on Zoom. So we'll proceed with the agenda. So now we'll move into the for information section of the agenda. And as you're familiar, there are updates provided to you with the agenda. So we'll open it up to see if there's any item that anyone would like to bring up at this time. If they have any questions, this would be the time to ask. All right. Well, then seeing none, then we'll move into for actions. So the first item under the for actions section will be the Department of Administration 2021-2025 strategic plan goals. So I will now refer it over to our city administrator, Cross.
I think actually that would be talking about that.
All right. So Councilmember Clark, looks like you'll be speaking to it.
Thank you. And we were going to go over this that we talked about in the January meeting. However, the mayor wasn't aware at that moment that he wouldn't be here. So he wants to be here for the update. So we're going to wait. And when he comes back, we'll give another update. And the update is mainly just going to be how we're changing it to just a continuous improvement to the plan, and attach links to identify and define each of the goals and the sub goals.
Okay. Any questions for Councilmember Clark regarding that item? Okay, moving on, then next we have the Watershed Erosion Task Force, and I will ask if Councilmember Farmer will take this one here.
Sure. I don't know, Mr. Vunich, if you're going to have anything you're going to want to add, but we had our meeting last time. We're starting to look at the detention and retention basins at a couple locations that are kind of at various points upstream from Cox Creek to try to take some of the load and strain off of our really distressed areas that are continue to take a pretty good beating. So we have our engineers, as a task force, we felt it would be a good usage of the money that we've allocated, some of the money we've allocated for this year, to start engaging with the engineers on how they can enhance a couple of the larger basins, the biggest of which happens to be in my subdivision, West Glen Farms. So they're looking at, they want to look at redoing some of the work as how the spillways function so they can retain more water and that water can flow in slower. And our hope is that, as we know, we've got several millions of dollars of work that needs to be done within the creek. This can kind of help take some of that load off for just a, 10 tens of thousands of dollars, hopefully here on each one of these little projects. So that's where we're at. I think it's a good move. It's a $50,000 allotment to try to get our engineers involved on a few of these detention basins.
All right, can I ask if Director Joe Vunich wants to add to that?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. Farmer did an excellent job of summarizing the discussion that was held at the January 2023 meeting. The department just would respectfully ask for a motion second and a favorable vote to prepare legislation for the next meeting of City Council to proceed forward with this contract with Wilson Hydro and Todd Wagner and Associates. Thank you.
Councilmember Dodwell.
I'll make said motion.
Okay, we have a motion made by Councilmember Dodwell. Is there a second? Councilmember Farmer, was that a second there?
That's okay.
Otherwise,
Tracy, do that works.
I'm sorry, what? Councilmember Nyan, you're seconding it. Okay, any discussion then on the motion? Seeing none, all those, Councilmember Clark, do you have your hand up? Okay. So seeing no hands up, then all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? All right, the motion passes. Thank you. We will move on to the next agenda item, which is the Planning and Parks Committee roadway escrow for Lot 5 of Hawks Trail Drive, and I will hand it over to Director Vunich.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. At the last Planning and Parks Committee meeting, the members took under advisement a request from City Council to consider the release of a $5,000 escrow to Justin Alsop. That escrow was collected to address a deficient road that serves approximately 5 of the overall 10 lots that are part of this particular plat. The discussion was lengthy and a lot of different components of that discussion explored other options. Ultimately, per the recommendation report that was provided to you tonight, option 1 was selected by the committee by a 4-2 vote. That option would return the $5,000 escrow to Mr. Alsop. And from that point forward, the city would monitor the condition of the road and potentially either treat it as a property maintenance issue or a nuisance code problem in the future. So tonight, the department is respectfully requesting, per the committee's action, authorization to return the escrow to Mr. Alsop. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Director Vunich. So with that, is there anyone that would like to make a motion with that? Councilmember Galani, is that a motion? Okay, is there a second for that? Councilmember Brost. Any discussion on the matter? And if anyone is online, just raise your hand. We'll get to you. So seeing no hands up, Councilmember Clark, get your hand up. I'll let you go now.
Yes, I was one of the ones that voted no on this in the committee, and I just wanted to let you know why. Because the resident paid this $5,000 because it was directed by our code, and now to give it back, I just feel it sets a precedence that others might come behind him and say, well, we wanted our money back also for different escrows. But there's the reasoning behind the HOA not paying for that road just doesn't make sense to me, because there's plenty of other roads that all of the residents don't use. The courts, excuse me, Hawks Rest Courts, Hawks Hill Road, Red Tail, and those are only used by the people that go down those roads. So to say that the whole HOA should not be responsible for this, I don't think it makes sense. I would rather go back and ask the HOA to take over and pay for the repair of this road, because there's enough people to take the cost down quite a bit. And I think it would end up costing this resident less in the long run than having him be now responsible for his road to take care of practically by himself.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Clark. Any other comments or discussion on the matter? Director Vunich, you have your hand up. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you for recognizing me, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I just wanted to add that City Attorney Young did review the approaches to future enforcement if necessary, and I do want to extend my appreciation for his assistance.
All right, thank you. All right, I do not see any other hands up wishing to comment on that, so we do have a motion on the floor. Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone? Anyone oppose or abstain?
Opposed.
Okay, seeing that we have a few, I'm going to just ask if you could raise your hands and we'll see if we have, all right, Councilmember Clark, McCutcheon, and Edens. So seeing that we still have the majority, which will pass the motion then. All right, City Clerk has confirmed that. All right, then that we'll move on. The next item on the agenda is the reconsideration of the Birch Forest Drive turnaround gate installation for the fire district. And I will now hand it over to Director Joe Vunich.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. As is referenced in the letter that was prepared for tonight's meeting, back at the end of 2022, the Planning and Parks Committee presented a recommendation to City Council to authorize an additional expenditure in conjunction with Birch Forest Drive turnaround to accommodate an emergency access gate as prescribed by the fire district and its requirements. Ultimately, the City Council chose not to proceed forward with that for a number of reasons, principally the cost and it not being budgeted. Tonight, the item is on the agenda for reconsideration. The benefit of tonight's discussion is that much of the work relative to the T turnaround is complete. And in fact, the landscaping is almost complete as of today. There are some additional refinements, cleanup, but what is going to be there is there. And I think from the photographs that were provided by Councilmember McCutcheon and the Department of Planning, you can see it has become a cut through as was suspected and feared. So tonight, this is a reconsideration item. Mr. Brown and I are available for any comments or questions about the project itself, but I would certainly turn it over to the two Ward 5 representatives if they would like to add anything. Thank you.
All right, so before we get started, since this is unique in that it is a reconsideration, I will ask the city attorney just to explain how that process works.
Reconsideration of any action taken previously will have to be made by a person who was who voted in favor of the bill, what was passed previously. If that passes, then the motion stands as being for reconsideration. So what would be before you after a successful motion on the request for consideration would be before the board or before the council, and the council would vote on it up or down.
Again.
I'm sorry, you're correct. Who prevailed, correct.
So on the prevailing side, and just for clarification, does that require a simple majority or 2/3?
It requires a simple majority.
Okay. All right, so then therefore at this point, we would need, if someone wishes to then reconsider, someone who is on the prevailing side would have to make that motion to reconsider. All right, seeing nothing, we don't have any motions yet, I guess, or? Okay, so Councilmember Dodwell will make it, but we do need a second from the prevailing side. Councilmember Bros?
Well, I don't. Voted on, but does Katie make it? I can make a second or I'll be on the.
Okay, you are on the prevailing side, so he's going to make the motion. So we do have now a motion for reconsideration made by Councilmember Dodwell, seconded by Councilmember Bros. So we do have a motion on the floor. We can have discussion. And Councilmember McCutcheon, you had your hand up. You can go now.
I know some members wanted to post a camera to see what the traffic was like through the emergency access. There have been several residents close to the turnaround. One specifically said within an amount of 15 minutes, there were 5 cars that drove through there. If you go up close, you can see there are truck marks, which are now having a negative impact on the pavers. It's my understanding the trash truck and the recycling truck go through there as well. That area is not constructed to hold that weight to go across there. And again, it is something that the fire department requested. It's something that was in the original plan for the Birch Forest access. And I would greatly appreciate it on behalf of Ward 5 residents if you would vote to push this through. Thank you.
I do see Director Brown with your hand up. You wish to comment?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just wanted to make a quick comment. And Joe, I don't know if Travis can pull up the photograph showing the connection or not. But I wanted to point out that the work is largely complete at this point, but what's not shown in the photographs, in lieu of a gate, we've installed two object markers on posts that should effectively block folks from driving through that opening at the end of the road and using that temporary connection. So that was done in lieu of the gates being placed to help keep that area secure. Those posts can be removed in the event of an emergency where they need access to cut through, but there are 2 posts there with object markers on them to mark the end of the road that should prevent people from using that temporary connection. After looking at it today in the field, quite frankly, I'd like to install a 3rd one, which I think would further mark the end of that roadway as we would typically do. And I think that would even further discourage its use as a cut through. So thank you for that. I just wanted to provide that comment.
Thank you. I have Councilmember Brost and then Dodwell.
So I guess, Rick, if I understand what you were saying, these are posts that are removable.
Yes, council member, they're intended to be removable. So we have them fastened on a base so they can be pulled out by the fire department on an emergency basis. So there's 2 of them in the ground right now. In lieu of the channelizers, those orange channelizers, we have 2 of them spaced across that connection. And I'd like to actually put a 3rd out there as well.
Okay, thank you. Because I guess in looking at this photo, the one thing I would say is, you put 3 of them there, someone's bound to go through the grass and over the curb anyway. So if there's some barrier, I guess we can watch for that, but I'd still say that someone's going to get there and be upset, just going to drive right through anyway. So the post that Rick is talking about, that's what's in the budget already.
I believe those are already there. Like they're there today.
Yeah, they were up today.
But just not in this photo.
Yeah, in
not in
fact,
the
I did
photo.
take a photo today and I just sent it to Travis. If Travis could pull it up, there is a photo I took from that site today.
And Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, the photographs I took were last week to include them in the packet of information. So I do not have photographs of the new posts that have been placed.
I have Council, you have anything else you wish to add at this point?
Travis have
Travis,
a photo?
he might be trying to pull it up. It's a
Okay.
photo that I think will at least show a little bit of a representation. I think that the lighting is a little poor. You could see the shadow of it. Okay, Councilmember Dodwell, you had your hand up and then I see Councilmember Galani.
Yes, I had my hand up because this is not in my ward, but I drive past it pretty much every day. And Turnberry has had a similar setup for the past 25 years or so with cones. And I would like to request that we do something similar to this to make it more attractive for Turnberry and its location, since this just got here this year. And for 25 years, the Turnberry residents have been dealing with orange cones, and the people driving up and down Strucker have been dealing with orange cones and orange posts. So if we could do something similar, either take it back to Admin Public Works with a cost estimate, and then we can bring it to a council meeting later in the year. But the residents of Turnberry, I pretty much can imagine, are going to be complaining that they don't have something that's quite as less annoying to look at as these when you're sitting on your front porch. So that was all I wanted to make a comment on.
All right. I'll get, is that a question then you want to?
Question, can we get it onto an agenda somewhere in the Admin and Public Works meeting? Get cost estimates put together for what would occur at Turnberry in a similar fashion, so that we as a council can make an assessment as to whether we invest additional funds this year, or if we put it into our budget for next year. But we need to get something moving that's similar for another subdivision that's had nothing but Band-Aids for the last 25, 30 years.
So maybe it might be a good question for Director Brown, like might be something that the city could install at that location. Rick, is that something you want to opine on right now, or do you feel like we just have to wait till it gets to committee?
Mayor Pro Tem, I think certainly we could investigate the possibility of that, a typical or similar installation at Turnberry. We may want to have a similar conversation with the fire district relative to their access at that location, though, when we do that. So I'm happy to report back on that at Admin Public Works if you'd like to have it on the agenda.
Okay, great. I think that would work. So I've got a couple more speakers. I've got Councilmember Galani, Bartoni, and then Rambo and McCutcheon. So go ahead, Councilmember Galani.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. I mean, we've talked about this at length in committee and looked at every possible, and I know that the gate is pretty costly, and the ongoing maintenance is another concern from a cost perspective. I think if we've already got these two posts in there and potentially adding a third, I don't know what those posts cost. I'm assuming they're relatively inexpensive. Potentially, we also talked about, which I don't see why we couldn't do, is put some landscaping, like tall grass over there to the left side of that, where the lawn is, to not have it just be flat, grass or dirt. I think that would certainly deter anybody from going around the posts and going through there. And then maybe as a final added benefit further down the street, maybe putting a not through sign, so that folks that are used to trying to cut through there now would, as at the entrance to get onto that street, they would see a not through sign that would let them know that it's blocked, to avoid a bunch of people turning around at the end of that street. But I mean, seeing that we've got those two posts in there already, I don't see why we wouldn't pursue that for the time being.
All right, Councilmember Bartoni.
Thank you. And I kind of agree with Mr. Galani. I think we should just see if this works first before we spend an additional $17,000. But in the meantime, and I don't know if this question is going to be for Mr. Vunich or Mr. Brown, but has Waste Connection been contacted and told to stop driving through there?
Not to my knowledge, Councilmember, but we can certainly do that and be sure they are aware they are not to go through there. I think with the signs, that should send the message, but we can certainly send notice to them.
Yeah, and maybe just emphasize that that's not a way to go through, and send them an invoice for any damage they do to the area, and they'll probably turn their trucks around. Thank you.
Councilmember Rambo.
Yeah, the cones kind of might be considered unsightly, but the posts look okay, and saving money is good, but we need to solve the problem. And so my question is to Director Brown, do we have experience with these poles? Do they get lost over time? Can the fire department easily remove them? Will the fire department agree to this solution, et cetera?
Well, I don't know that we have this exact situation, quite frankly, but I mean, this is the standard manner in which you are, in theory, by the federal regulations, are supposed to sign a dead end is with these types of signs. They are on a sleeve in the ground, and we are working on the details. And I think we've got some ideas about how to make the sign as easily removable as possible. And I don't know if we've had explicit discussions with the fire district relative to that mechanism. I'd have to check on that with Dan Ron. But I think it's a pretty good approach. And we'll check the advanced signing as was referenced to be sure we have some signage in place indicating that the road is closed to through traffic. That's not new. It's been like that before. It's just we've changed how people turn around, frankly. So I wouldn't expect a lot of confusion in that regard, or any problems above and beyond what might have been present before. But well, I guess my suggestion was we would add the third sign and then keep an eye on it. And if the problem persists, then we may have grounds to reconsider some additional changes at that location, which could be a gate, frankly.
Yeah, so I appreciate the effort, and it looks like a viable solution. If they can be easily removed, they will be easily removed is kind of my concern. And also I recall the discussion with the fire department folks. As I recall, I may be mistaken, but I think they didn't want to get out of their trucks during an emergency. And so that kind of that might blow this solution out of the water if we're not careful. So you said you haven't explored this with them. So I'm not sure if this is going to solve the problem once the fire department here's what we're trying to do.
No, I'll have to check with Dan Ron to the degree that we've coordinated this explicit solution with them, but the means to remove the signs should be relatively quick. Yes, it does require at this point someone to get out of a truck to do it. But remember, this is not intended to be used for response on a day-by-day basis. This would be on an emergency basis.
Sure. I just want them to be happy with the solution. So thanks for the answer.
All right, Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yeah, I have a couple of things to mention. There is currently the street is not through sign at the end of Birch Forest. There cannot be landscaping in order to camouflage this access portion because it is concrete. There's no way to plant landscaping so that it would camouflage that you can or cannot drive through there. And my concern is we put these up. I don't think 3 is going to do it. I mean, we had some kind of similar barriers out there before. Somebody wanted to go through there, they pick it up, they move it, and they drive through. I think as long as there's a way for them to drive up even through the grass or around those poles, it's going to happen. It's certainly better than nothing there, and let's hope it works. I'm not confident that it will work. And then last time we had this discussion, Turnberry Place came up during the previous discussion. Turnberry has nothing to do with this issue. This is a separate issue. Turnberry is a public street. It is not allowed to have gates on the public street. There is an ordinance that says for an instance in a emergency access that gates are allowable by ordinance.
Councilmember Berlino.
Yeah, folks, this situation is again one of those cans we've been kicking down the road for so long a time. I can't remember when we started it. The citizens who live around this area now are pretty disgusted with us. I've only had 2 issues in 11 years that really I've gotten a lot of calls on. One was the park when we did all the park issue, and then this one. And the people around, especially the folks in Brightleaf, the new subdivision, saying, why can't you get it right? Why can't you just do something? And the right answer was put a gate up. And that's what the original plan was. That's what the original construction was made for. And here we are back to saying, second guessing ourselves and saying, let's try this temporary thing. let's put the gate up. It's $16,000. You won't even remember it 2 months from now. And the folks will be happy. It'll solve all of our problems. We won't have to kick this can again because it's going to be over and done with. Thank you.
Okay, I do have a comment and then I see a couple more hands up, but I'm going to put myself down to just speak. I did go visit the site today. And actually, you know, I was kind of disappointed because I took pictures in 2020 before the turnaround. And Councilmember McCutcheon mentioned camouflage. It was camouflage back then. You couldn't tell except for this. And the turnaround, I think, made it worse. So I don't know why now we went down that path of doing that and then doing this. But I know that the gate is a point of contention, and especially the cost. So I've seen other places where there are these fold down safety bollards that are intentionally designed to prevent vehicles from going through, but they're for emergency service so that they could be folded down. There's usually a lock or some kind of key, just similar to how a gate would have. And they're rather inexpensive compared to the gate. And I thought, well, that's a good compromise because that's what they're designed for. So I was thinking maybe that would be it, but I was surprised when I went there today because then I saw the two posts that are there that I took a picture of. So maybe that was the intention of that. And according to what Rick said, those can come off too. But otherwise, maybe the safety bollards would be another option. That would be low cost. I'm looking online. I saw a couple $100 getting those. Uline has it for $130. So, you know, just to throw it out there is another option. But Council Member Ottenberg.
Yeah, question. The obstacles that are there now, how easy is it actually for a motorist to just drive up to them, get out of the car and pull them out and lay them aside?
I guess if I was going to respond to that, I would say they're enough of a deterrent that I certainly wouldn't take the time to do it.
Okay. No, that's all I really wanted to know. I just wondered, you know, if they could be easily removed once, then the deterrent factor is going to be minimal because everybody's going to figure out that they can remove them pretty quickly. But if it's a more of a permanent installation, I feel more comfortable with them. So thank you, Mr. Brown.
Do we have anyone else that wishes to speak on the matter? Otherwise, we do have a motion. Councilmember Clark.
Yeah, I just have a question about the gate. If these posts don't do it, is the gate going to have a long fence to cover all of that area as well? Or is it just the gate over the area? Because if these posts won't keep them from going over the dirt, then why would the gate?
Maybe that's a question for Director Vunich.
Well, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Ms. Clark, when the T turnaround was designed, majority of it has a 6-inch vertical curb. The only rolled portion of the curb is in association with the emergency access, and that will be blocked by the gate if approved. And the gate sits on 2 large posts that will be anchored into the ground by concrete. The intent with the landscaping too is eventually see how it does, but we could certainly add a few landscape boulders, things like that, to deter anybody from thinking about it in the future if it does become a problem. Thank you.
Okay. I think we've had plenty of discussion. Councilmember Farmer, one more comment.
I'll take a swing just because everybody else got one. So if I remember correctly, I think I was the one that asked, can we just put a camera up to see if there's a real problem or if it's 1 or 2 cars? So I guess I'm kind of curious. We didn't put a camera up. I don't know if we tried to put a camera up or we can't put a camera up, but what's up?
Well, Mr.
Council.
Mayor, if I could just answer that question, Mayor Pro Tem. The construction just completed, Mr. Farmer, and so with the construction activity underway, it was half open, half closed, sometime blocked, not blocked. So we were kind of waiting to see once construction was done, where would be the best location. Now with the new post, it may not be necessary. Thank you.
that's good, but could we still put a camera out there just to see if maybe it is? I don't know. Do we have cameras to do that?
You want me to respond, Joe?
Please.
Yes, please.
I would say that if we think it's still a problem, we could certainly evaluate putting a camera in place to see if that would capture the magnitude of the problem. I'd have to check with Captain Mundell. Last I'd heard, they did have a camera that we might be able to utilize. But again, I think as Joe was saying, until we got the project completed, it probably didn't make a lot of sense to do it. Once we get it in its final state with the science and such, it would make more sense maybe to do that, especially if we think people are cutting through still.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Councilmember Bertolino. I mean, we spend a lot more than $16,000 on a lot of stuff all the time. I'm certainly not opposed to do that if it's correcting a real problem, safety problem or otherwise. But I'm also a fan of, if we have the ability to get a small amount of data to figure out if we actually should do that, there's plenty of stuff we got $16,000 to spend on. I'm not opposed to doing it here, but I would like to know that this is a real problem, especially if it's the garbage trucks and things. If it's some kid driving through back and forth 10 times a day, perhaps a conversation with our wonderful Wildwood Police Department saves us 16 grand. I don't know. Might be worth a shot.
Okay, well, I don't see any other hands up, so I think we've had plenty of discussion on the matter. So as you might recall, we do have a motion for reconsideration. So that would need to pass, and then City Attorney, correct me, then we would need another motion if that were to pass again, right? Or would the reconsideration take care of it? Oh, the reconsideration would take care of it. So does anyone need the motion read again, or is everyone good with that? Okay, City Clerk.
I just have that the motion is to reconsider the gate at the Birch Forest turnaround.
City Attorney, is that good enough, or do we need more clarity?
What is the motion that was being reconsidered? So what motion was made that we're okay? I think the reconsideration.
Mr. Young,
Yes, sir.
the action of the committee was to support the installation of the gate.
The action of the council at the October 24th meeting was the motion made October 24th was for the Department of Planning and Parks to review less expensive options for the Birch Forest Drive turnaround, which will be submitted to the Planning and Parks Committee and then City Council. Without objection, it was added to the motion that the Planning and Parks Committee would review using a camera to determine the amount of 3 traffic at the Birch Forest Drive turnaround.
So that's the last action taken by the council on that matter. Okay, so that's the vote that's actually being reconsidered. Now, once the reconsideration, if it passes, that motion can be amended to further action.
So read one more time the reconsideration, if you don't mind. All right, go ahead and read it.
At the October 24th meeting, the motion was for the Department of Planning and Parks to review less expensive options for the Birch Forest Drive turnaround, which will be submitted to the Planning and Parks Committee and then City Council. Then without objection, it was added to the motion that the Planning and Parks Committee would review using a camera to determine the amount of 3 traffic at the Birch Forest Drive turnaround. And then that motion ultimately failed.
So is any of that activity been completed?
Well, the motion failed, so there was no direction. So it's reconsideration of that motion.
Okay, so if it is reconsidered, then at this point, it would go to Planning and Parks to evaluate other options that are of lesser cost, and also the camera. Okay, so then just the camera piece needs to happen. Yeah. Well, I think the motion was to look at those options. They went ahead and did that. Yeah, so I think in that case, then we may just need to wait until we get the camera piece done before we can do anything.
We didn't pass that.
Didn't get passed.
Didn't get passed. So it looks
So
like then
they're-
it would still.
They're reconsidering the
Got it.
motion that was made.
Okay, so if this motion to reconsider passes, then at this point, what's remaining is just having the camera put up because the other piece has already been done. And then it would find out more once we get that camera information. Councilmember Flasher.
So what I'm gathering is that we didn't pass that they do anything. And they did something anyway, which was a less expensive option. So they did what we at one point were trying to make a motion for, even though we said, don't do that. They did that. Except for the camera piece. And so now if we keep this going, we're just guaranteeing that we're going to have the camera piece done. But the lesser option's already in place, which
That's
is what
right.
we were trying to approve in the
So
first
I don't
place.
know that the camera will catch much at this point unless someone
Right.
goes around it.
So at this point, we're just voting on whether or not we should do the camera. Got it.
Yeah, if you feel that the camera is still worthy of having it, even though right now there's posts there, that's what reconsideration would do. That's, so we have that motion now on the floor. I mean, we still have to entertain it. So therefore, hopefully you are clear. If this motion to reconsider passes, it basically is just looking to get information from the camera. That's what the motion was before that failed. Okay, can you do a roll call vote? We have one more question. Then at this point, there's no other action unless the council comes up with one.
Mayor Pro Tem, okay, I misspoke. I apologize. That motion actually passed. Correct.
Okay, so the motion you'd read.
Yes, I
passed.
apologize. Yes, that passed. So I guess the motion to
Council members, my suggestion, because there was no motion that failed and the motion that was made that passed has been substantially carried out. That a motion to reconsider really isn't something appropriate at this time, and I would recommend just if you want to make a motion to proceed with a new course of action, that motion would be appropriate at this time.
So city attorney, I guess it'd be fair to say the motion on the floor, is it fair to rule it out of order since that last motion passed?
Correct.
Okay, so with that, we're going to rule this motion that's on the floor out of order. And if anyone wishes to make a new motion, we'll certainly entertain that. Councilmember Farmer.
I would like to make a motion to finish the motion that we passed the last time.
All right, please
So
be clear.
if we could get some, since we're going to put the poster there, I think that's a great plan. Let's get some cameras up and see if we have a real problem to fix. If we do, I'm all for fixing it. If we don't ever have to talk about it again, which would be super great.
can you
Okay, you have made a motion.
hold on? Can I get specificity? So is it just to install cameras?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to put this third post up. I think that's great. Put get the project done the way they need it done. Put the cameras up so we can make sure that whatever has been done solves this problem. And we go from there. I don't know if it's a Joe or a Rick question, or maybe Captain Mondell. Is there a period of time that is appropriate to like gauge something like that for a camera? Like I don't know, is it a month? Is it a couple weeks?
Councilmember, we have a couple options. I know the Department of Public Works has a camera that we use for traffic counting, which we can install and run video or capture video for essentially 72 hours with one charge of the battery. So we could do that for multiple weeks if we desire to do it. I'd have to check with Captain Mundell, the guards, with their camera, if it's still available. I don't know how long. Usually the limitation is relative to the battery and life or the storage of the device, how much video it can store. So I don't know if Captain Mundell's available or not, but we can follow up with him. And I think if we use our camera, we put it out for a week or two and there's not much action, that probably would tell us what we need to know. But we can certainly get it started on 1 week and review the data and go from there.
All right, well, then I will leave the amount of time nebulous and they could figure out, let's just get some cameras up and see what's going on. That's
Okay.
the motion.
So that motion is being made by Councilmember Farmer. Is there a second? Councilmember Ottenberg, was that a second?
No, I got a quick question. Since we already approved the motion put cameras out there, do we really need another motion to actually put the cameras out there?
My recollection is the motion was to refer the option of cameras to planning and parks, and this is a more direct action by the council.
All right, thank you.
Okay, seconded by Councilmember Dodwell. Any questions or discussion now with the motion that's on the floor? All right, seeing none, then we'll try voice vote on that. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed or abstain? Okay, we have one opposed. The motion passes. All right, then that moves on to miscellaneous, and we have several receive and file items here. We'll see what we can do. And then we'll kind of check and see what it's to 6:30 to see where we are. Director Vunich, do you want to take these?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of City Council, the first item of receipt and file is PZ 15-22, Glenn Scott. This was a request for a conditional use permit to allow front-facing solar panels visible from the street. This particular action by the Planning and Zoning Commission was to deny that request. As with any action on a conditional use permit request, the City Council has the authority to exercise power review if they should choose, and it must be done tonight within the 15-day window. The second item is PZ 18-22 Swisser Riding Stable. This is a request for a conditional use permit to allow a limited number of lessons to the public on an 8-acre tract of land off of Shepherd Road. The Planning and Zoning Commission granted the conditional use permit. And again, as with any conditional use permit, the City Council has the authority to exercise power review. That power review would have to be taken tonight if there are any questions regarding that action. The next item is PZ 11-22 Thomas Downing. Again, another request for a conditional use permit to allow solar panels to be front facing and visible from the street. Again, this particular item failed by the action of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And with this particular conditional use permit, the City Council has the authority to exercise power review. That power review must be taken tonight based upon, again, the 15-day window. The next item relates to PZ 16-07 Verizon Wireless. Verizon Wireless was granted an amendment to an existing conditional use permit to add an antenna array on the exterior of the tower, whereas all of the others are contained in the canister. The Planning and Zoning Commission supported this amendment and is presenting their action to the City Council tonight. Again, power review does exist, but it must be exercised this evening. The next is a preliminary plat that was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission for a 4-lot subdivision. All of the lots being over 14,000 square feet in size and intended for single-family detached dwellings. This particular subdivision is located on the east side of Center Avenue at basically its terminus. And again, the developer is Whalen Custom Homes, who has done a number of new dwellings in this particular area. The Planning and Zoning Commission endorsed the preliminary plat based upon the master plan, the town center plan, and the city's subdivision code and zoning and subdivision and development regulations. And the final item is a preliminary plat approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission for the West Eden subdivision. This is a large lot, single family subdivision that is in the NU non-urban residential area of our master plan. There will be 12 proposed lots with detached single family dwellings located upon them on the 66-acre tract of land. 20 plus acres of that tract of land is to be dedicated for common ground purposes. 2 key points here. The City Council granted a waiver to the centralized wastewater treatment plan. So in your report, there are a number of conditions to protect the groundwater source from non or ill-maintained septic systems that would be on the individual lots. And then finally, based upon the Missouri Department of Natural Resources, the potable water source will be from multiple family wells. Don't think that's multiple family dwellings, it's wells. So there'll be 6 total wells to serve the 12 lots. The The important item relative to multiple family wells is they are drilled at a much deeper depth than, let's say, on single family detached dwellings on individual lots, as is characteristic in the area. These wells will be at a 700 to 800 foot depth. If there are any questions on the 6 items, the Department of Planning would be more than glad to try and answer them at this time. And thanks to Mr.
Okay.
Newberry for keeping up.
Thank you so much, Director Vunich. So this is the time right now. There is no action necessary, but if you do wish to ask a question or entertain a power review, this would be it. So I do see Councilmember Bartoni with your hand up, and I did see Councilmember Dodwell. So Councilmember Bartoni, please.
Thank you, Mr. Garitano. In order to exercise our power review, what's the process to go through that? Do you just say right now and then it becomes on the council agenda? It's been a while since we've done this, so I need my memory refreshed.
And I would ask
The
Mr.
city
Young.
attorney. Oh,
Yeah, the exercise of the power review is simply a motion to bring it before the city council, and it would come before the city council, I believe, at the next regular meeting.
Okay, thank you. Then I want to do that. I want to, I guess, make the motion to or exercise our power review for the first and the third item, both of the pertaining to solar panels. I think we need to discuss this as a council. I'm not saying I don't have full confidence in the P&Z. I'm sure they did a lot of homework, but I think we need to discuss this at the council level as well.
okay, so therefore, you are making a motion for, and just for clarity's sake, you did say the first and the third, so that would be PZ 15-22 and PZ 11-22. Is that correct, Councilmember Bartoni?
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, so then we do need a second on that. Councilmember Rambo, you're seconding it. So the motion is to exercise the power of review for those 2 items. And we'll see if we can get with a voice vote here. Let's try that. So that motion for power review, if you are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, anyone oppose or abstain?
Oh, no.
Okay, we have 1 oppose and 1 abstention. Okay, so the motion passes.
Can we ask questions about that?
Yeah, I think right now, let's see, we are coming up on time here. So Director Vunich, if you want to entertain, we have 2 questions, Councilmember Flasher and Dodwell.
Certainly, I'll defer to the Mayor Pro Tem and City Council. I'll be glad to try to answer them as quickly as I can.
Okay, Councilmember Dodwell. then.
First off, I want to thank Councilmember Bartoni for bringing forward these 2 solar panel entities that need to come back to council. We've had this discussion before. We've shown photos before, looking at the 2 locations that are requesting solar panels. I don't think they're out of the norm. And if we're supposed to be a environmentally friendly city, why do we keep telling people that they cannot put solar panels on the front of their building? Who cares whether we see a solar panel on the front of a building? There are hundreds of rooftops that many of our residents look at because they're up on the hill and there's hundreds of houses below them that they have to see. I don't see anything in the documentation that was provided to council at this point that explains why P&Z voted the way they did, or what their motivations were. So I would like to have better understanding. I look forward to us being able to discuss it further at our next meeting.
Okay, Councilmember Flasher, is that your question? All right, it's covered. All right, Councilmember McCutcheon, is that related to these 2 items?
Yes.
Okay,
So the city has an ordinance that prevents from putting solar panels on the front facing of a home. So if we're going to address this, we might want to address the ordinance rather than the specifics.
all right, thank you. Seeing no other hands up, is there anyone else that wishes to discuss any of the receive and file items? Okay, anything else under miscellaneous? Councilmember Edens.
Yes, I regret not having asked this before, but Mr. Lawrence, are you planning on staying for the next meeting? Okay, great. And the reason why I asked that is because we have a resolution on the bridge that I spoke of before, and I don't know what your schedule's like, if you can stay for the whole thing. Normally, that would be at the end. If not, I will request to move it to the, we're good? Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right, seeing that, then we'll entertain a motion to adjourn and then we'll take a break for a few minutes here. So motion to adjourn made by Councilmember Flasher, seconded by Councilmember Farmer. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
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 Anyone oppose or abstain? All right, the work session is adjourned, and what we'll do right now is pause until 6:35, and we'll start our regular council meeting at that time. What's that? After she says it. All right, you ready? You gonna record? Wait, she's gonna record. See when she's ready. Go ahead.
The meeting will start.
Surely must have violated the drought.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much to our two attendees here. They do a much better job than I could. So thank you so much for getting us started here for our council meeting. So welcome to everyone. It is Monday, February 13th, and we will start our meeting. So we will ask for City Clerk Eldridge to start with the roll call.
Mayor Bolin, Councilmember Clark,
Here.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Here.
Councilmember Nian,
Here.
Councilmember Farmer,
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Here.
Councilmember Rambo,
Here.
Councilmember Flasher,
Here.
Councilmember Garitano,
Here.
Councilmember Bros,
Here.
Councilmember Edens,
Here.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell, Councilmember Bertolino,
Here.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Here.
Councilmember Hopper, Councilmember Galani.
Here.
All right, thank you. We'll now have the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you're able to in the room, please stand and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, next, we'll have the approval of the minutes with the consent agenda. So the next part is the public participation section of our meeting. I'm just going to read a couple of comments here. So public comment is a valuable component of our meeting, and anyone who wishes to speak must complete a speaker card and provide it to the city clerk who is seated to the left of your podium. If you wish to speak and you're attending remotely, please make sure to raise your hand on Zoom. When your name is called, please approach the podium and state your name and ward. To ensure that all who wish to speak have the opportunity to do so, there is a 5-minute time limitation. I will let you know when the time limit is reached. If you have any questions for us, please mention that during your remarks and identify the official you would like to respond. That official will make note of it, and at the conclusion of public participation, any official who chooses to respond will have 3 minutes to do so, as all questions are directed to that official. The official may choose to respond to your questions after tonight's meeting, and we may also post any responses on the City Council page of our website. Please be respectful to others in making your remarks. Interrupting others and using profane, abusive language are prohibited. I want to thank everyone in advance for following these. Okay, City Clerk Eldridge, who do we have?
The first speaker card is James Van Ness.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and council members and city attorney. I've spoken before you people a couple of times before. I spoke, this time I'm here for the same thing. It's resolution 2023-4, which is the private streets and alleys. I spoke before the Admin Public Works Committee, and you came up with a resolution changing the private streets procedures. And tonight you have a chance to review it and vote on it. But there's some wording that needs to be added. So we're asking you to postpone it and get the proper words in. There's a big difference between private streets and private alleys. Private streets, for instance, Crestview here, our center, the property owners own up to the center line of the street. Where they're giving it to the city is their actual property. In the subdivision, the property owners don't own the alleys at all. We have a Missouri nonprofit corporation that owns the alleys. It's called Windsor Crest Homeowners Association. The only one that can convey the alleys, do anything with the alleys, is the homeowners association. The individual people cannot. We vote for the people on the board and they make the decision. So you added the word In this tonight, in Exhibit A, they added the word alleys to item number 1. When you get to number 2, it uses that to state that we need the approval of all homeowners. That does an undue burden on the subdivision. For one thing, we got 10 or 12 rental houses where the owners are in New York, California, everywhere else. But in fact, they don't own it anyway. It's the only ones that can vote on anything with the subdivision is the board members of the association. So we'd like maybe it in there when it says 100% of the homeowners for private streets, and then say 100% of the association board members for private alleys. And this will be the same thing with the Cherry Hills alleys and Brightleaf and Main Street. So we just think the wording could be better to reflect who owns what. And in our indentures, it calls it that that the board of directors has the right to convey the common property called private alleys to a public entity, which is the city of Wildwood, but only them. We were taken to court years ago in St. Louis County. We challenged our indentures and challenged the board, and the county court ruled that the association has complete control and the indentures are legal. So we did that in Windsor Crest homeowners versus Mark and Veronica Leach. And so they're the ones that have the power, and we just like the wording to reflect that. Otherwise, we're good to go, and we appreciate everything that's been going on to get it done. And we've also come before the council 3 times for streetlights, for the lake in the park, and for the common ground snowplow. And in each time, all we needed was the homeowners association members. So the precedent's been set 3 times for our subdivision. Thank you. Oh, did I say my address? 17133 Windsor Crest, Ward 1. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Van Ness.
So what we're asking for is either the words or postponement to get the words. Thank you.
All right, thank you. City Clerk Eldridge, who's our next speaker?
The next speaker is Mike Doster.
Thank you. Mr. President Pro Tem, members of the council, City Attorney John Young. My name is Mike Doster. My address is 16150 Main Circle Drive in Chesterfield, Missouri. You all know that this has been a long journey to this point, and we know that there is a vote on your agenda tonight on this proposal. A lot of work has been done, not only by the developers team, but by city staff, by the Planning Commission, and yourselves. The plan that is before you is a plan that we believe reasonably addresses all the issues and concerns that have been identified throughout the process. Likewise, the conditions that are part of the bill are conditions that have been developed to address those issues and concerns. Many of them are customized to this particular plan. And I would like to direct your attention to 3 of the conditions, if you don't mind, and I will read portions of them because I think they're pertinent, particularly to the update that was placed before council. Earlier. There are some 90 to 100 that will be appropriately landscaped as required by the streetscape design requirements of the town center plan and approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission on the site development plan. The installation of required plantings as approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission on the landscape plan, which will be situated along the site's State Route 109 and Manchester Road frontages, shall be the first to be installed by the developer. That is, as soon as grading works completed through the stage to allow such. Determination of this level of completion of grading for the installation of plantings shall be per the Planning and Zoning Commission. Condition 4E, grading of the site shall be completed in a minimum of 5 phases, with no single phase of land disturbance to be greater than 18 acres in overall size or as approved on the phase grading plan, a rather unique condition. The phases and locations of the grading associated with the subject site shall be indicated on the required site development plan and reviewed and acted upon by the Planning and Zoning Commission thereon. All grading requirements and designs shall also be reviewed and acted upon by the Department of Public Works before any permit is issued for such activity. And finally, 4F, The developer shall provide a preliminary grading plan that focuses only on how the phases of grading will initially be planned. This preliminary plan should address how the existing woodlands along the edges of the property and its respective frontages will be preserved, or how these same locations will be first graded, then landscaping per an approved plan installed, so as in either instance, buffers are established along the roadways that shield the grading activity that is underway within the interior of the site. Those conditions and really many more will be part of the review process when we go through the site development plan phase. It's my ask tonight on behalf of the petitioner that the bill be passed and that we be allowed to proceed to the site development plan process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Doster. City Clerk Eldridge, who is our next speaker?
The next speaker is George Stock.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. For the record, my name is George Stock. I'm with Stock and Associates Consulting Engineers, and my address is 257 Chesterfield Business Parkway. I was before you on January 9th, 2023. I presented the stormwater management strategy and plan for this site. It's pretty simple, low impact development. It's a treatment train system whereby we treat the first drop of water off a roof through a downspout onto amended soils, from amended soils to bioretention basins, from bioretention basins onto stormwater management basins, all being done in order to protect the Bonham Creek. The reserve in itself, as I mentioned, is 10.9% of the overall area tributary to Bonham Creek where it leaves the reserve property. All these measures that we're putting in are to provide water quality, volume reduction, all to mimic the pre-developed conditions and manage the peak flows from the site such that they're dramatically reduced. We reviewed how MSD has published release rates that are very restrictive, that further lower the discharge of stormwater from the site into the creek. And as Mr. Doster just read to you the conditions, we've agreed to do a phased grading plan, break it down into 5 phases in order to make the area smaller, balance the dirt, restoration before we move on to another one. With all this in mind, we think we have a good strategy with our preliminary development plan and certainly would appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stock. City Clerk Eldridge is our next speaker.
The next speaker is Rusty Saunders.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and the council. My name is Rusty Saunders. I am with Loomis Associates, Landscape Architects, Land Planners. Office is at 750 Spirit 40 Park Drive in Chesterfield, 63005. I'm here again to talk about the reserve project. I've been engaged by Payne Homes for the last 7 years as their landscape architect and land to do various tasks on this project, tree stand delineation, tree preservation plan, as well as landscape plan for the project. We have reviewed the arborist letters that were produced in 2021 and 2022 and have a couple of comments. The first one relates to the tree preservation methods that we will be using on grand trees number 1, 5, and 6. There's a variety of techniques that we can be using there. We'll be resolving those in the detail as we move forward into the improvement plans and the final development plans. But those would involve things like directional boring for utilities, making sure utilities don't conflict with the trees that we're trying to preserve, construction of green walls or modular walls. And these are all in our palette of available materials or techniques that we can use in order to do that. I might point out a project that we did a similar tree preservation as Pecan Park down in Chesterfield Valley near the outlet malls was our work product, where there was the large 54-inch pecan tree that was preserved specifically there with a lot of these same sort of techniques that I'm referring to. The second thing I wanted to talk about was the grand tree designation. Both the arborists that reviewed this on your behalf support the idea that our mapping as well as our criteria, definitional criteria that we used for assigning the grand trees or not grand trees was accurate. They seemed to be hopeful that there would be other ordinance conditions or other ways that those trees could be saved, but they did absolutely in both cases agreed that our mapping was an accurate representation of the city, present city codes and definitions. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. City Clerk Eldridge, who's our next speaker?
The next speaker is Debbie Gregory.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Debbie Gregory. I live at 9811 Eagle Crest Court in Sunset Hills. I'm here speaking on the reserve. I am representing the sellers, the owners of the property. And as I mentioned before, my parents, Bernie and Vanita Slavic, along with Ken and Mary Dubelbeis, bought this property in the 1970s. 1988, my husband began the development process. Since then, he's had many different developers that he's worked with. He's talked to Target, Deerbergs, Schnucks, worked many years with each of them, and they've all been denied throughout the years. We are not a large corporation. We're made up of many families. Since we have started developing the property, 9 family members have died, including my parents and Mr. and Mrs. Dubelbeis. My sister, her husband, a nephew, and 2 of the Dubelbeis children have also passed. I'm concerned that more family members will pass before we're able to see this property get developed. The rest of our family includes 5 retired or near retirement families. We have 16 children involved in their families, and there's 20 grandchildren, which 2 of my grandchildren were up here start at the meeting tonight. All of these people involved, all our family members could be using money for their homes, for education, and for our retirement. In 2004, the Neighborhood Improvement District was passed. We were strongly encouraged to participate. As I mentioned last time, we have already spent $738,310. We will be spending another $86,860 in the next 2 years. We've had to ask our family members to pitch in money to help pay for this because we never thought it was going to be 17 years later and it still wasn't approved. Payne Family Homes has been willing to revamp their plans multiple times to meet the request and address the concerns of the members of this council, proving they would be a good partner for the current and future citizens of Wildwood. We would strongly encourage you to vote yes on Bill 2765. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker.
The next speaker is Vicky Rabluski.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak before you again today. I was here in December discussing the alleys in Windsor Crest subdivision, the resolution 2023-4. I'm Vicky Rabluski, an original homeowner of Windsor Crest in Ward 1 and have been board president for the Homeowners Association since March of last year. I just wanted to follow up with some additional comments to what Jim Van Ness shared with you, who is our past board president. For Windsor Crest homeowners, when we moved in, McBride Homes neglected to mention anything about the alleys when we bought our homes, and then you don't get your indentures until you actually move into the house when you close on the property. So it was a surprise to many homeowners that the homeowners association owned the alleys mandated by the city of Wildwood as a part of the new town center development. Also for many that live in the subdivision, it's also been top of mind since they've moved in, and really why I'm here representing them today as the board president. I came to you in December to ask the city council about moving forward to accept the alleys as a part of the updated town center plan. I was excited when Mr. Joe Garitano recognized that the updated plan recommended acceptance of the alleys and that it was different than the private roads that are in many Wildwood subdivisions. And it was also good that it was indicated that Rick Brown also needed to look at funding, that he'd be happy to meet to talk about the process for reallocating funds so that could happen. He also indicated acceptance of the alleys was different than the process for acceptance of the roads for public dedication, which is in Exhibit A, which is also on the agenda for tonight, and that the policy needed to be revised. After reading it yesterday, that in Exhibit A, that's why I'm here today. I thought it might be helpful to come back again to make a few comments. First, the Windsor Crest Homeowners Association has not been new at making this request. We've been asking for 18 years. It's been discussed at every annual meeting with city council members present at some of our meetings. So the request is not new, but I never realized that there was a policy or process in place that needed to be completed until October of 2022 when I spoke with Rick Brown. Second, the process outlined in Exhibit A, as Jim Van Ness has mentioned, is not the same process used for some of the other matters, and it was not the same consistent process. The process that was used to turn over the streetlights to the city, it was not used when we turned over the retaining pond to the city, when you needed access to build the walking trail, and it was not used when the homeowners association agreed to do the watering of the common ground on Highway 109, 100, and on the walking trail in exchange for snow removal for the same alleys that we're talking about tonight. Board president approval was acceptable for those decisions and were quickly done at times when it benefited the city. Finally, if you read the indentures, as Jim also indicated, when the subdivision was built, that the amended wording is not complete and that we should not need the 77 homeowners' signatures because they do not have the authority to turn over the alleys or to make the request. Windsor Crest is already established in the court that the board or St. Louis County Court that the board represents them. And we just like the wording to be inclusive so we can move on. Certainly, I'm here on behalf of all the neighbors in the subdivision. We would like to move forward with after this amount of time being able to make the request to move forward, and appreciate your time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, City Clerk Eldridge, the next speaker, please.
The next speaker card is Gregory Haug.
Hi, Gregory Haug, 128 Light Horse in Chesterfield. I want to stop by and introduce myself. I'm a candidate for the Monarch Fire Protection District. I just wanted to introduce who I am. I'm a retired Shrewsbury police officer, 16 years as a police officer, business owner, realtor. Moved to Chesterfield with my family, followed my family out west. We got an election coming up April 4th. Appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker, or do we have any?
I don't have any more speaker cards, but there's someone on Zoom.
Okay, so we do have someone on Zoom, and so we will get you on the Zoom screen in just a short moment here. And when you do join, please make sure to remember to state your name and your ward.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Calzada likely didn't hear your instructions as he was coming in.
Okay, just a reminder to please state your name and ward number, and you can go ahead and speak.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kevin Calzada. I am the owner of the property at 18443 Rieger Road in Wildwood, part of Ward 1. And I'm currently scheduled for an item on the agenda today for a zoning change. First reading of a zoning change from a Parks and Scenic PS zoning district to non-urban NU for my current residential property. And I would like to make the proposal here that we could do the first and the second readings of the legislation in the meeting today. And once again, this is for Bill 2769. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you to all those that participated during public participation. So just a few brief remarks under the Mayor Pro Tem's announcements. I am filling in for Mayor Boland tonight. So thank you so much to all for the honor to serve in this role here. And as a reminder, I do still serve in my role as Ward 8 council member and therefore will still be able to vote. But should there be any tie, I will not be able to break a tie vote tonight. Other than that, everything else still remains the same, and I appreciate your confidence in me running tonight's meeting here. So we'll move on to the agenda here. We do not have any public hearings, so we'll move into legislation under unfinished business. So first item, Bill 2765. Okay, so Bill 2765 is before the council for final passage and concerns Ward 1. Is there a motion for the second reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Bertolino, seconded by Councilmember Brost. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. All right, so we don't need a roll call then, do we? Yeah, go ahead.
Bill number 2765, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, endorsing and ratifying the recommended changes to the street network map of the town center plan and authorizing a change in the zoning district designations from the C8 planned commercial district and the R6A 3,000 square foot residence district with the planned environment unit PEU to the amended C8 planned commercial district and the R3 10,000 square foot residence district with a planned residential development overlay district PRD for attractive land 50.7 acres in size located on the west side of State Route 109 north of Manchester Road to be used for no more than 132 single-family detached dwellings on individual lots, associated common ground spaces, required public space areas, and a minimum of one commercial outlot fronting State Route 109. Second.
Director Vunish, do you have anything to add to the information that's already been presented to council?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I just have a couple of points I'd like to make. First, tonight, the department at work session provided an update regarding a couple of items that were discussed at the January meeting of this body. Those items related to additional renderings of the property, maybe not at a matured stage of the development, but otherwise during the development cycle itself. There was also a request for additional information relating to the tree preservation plan. Mr. Saunders spoke tonight on that particular matter as part of public participation. So as part of the discussion, the department did provide the 2 letters from the certified arborist at Davie Resource Group that the city engaged to help in this particular matter, and also provided the renderings that were made available from the petitioner early on in the process. The department would note again that the 2 arborists do have extensive comments as part of their overall review of this particular project. And I do just want to make sure that the council is aware of those. And then finally, the bill is in appropriate form for final passage tonight. There have been no changes. And with that, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, the department's available for any comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill 2765 is on the floor for discussion. So if there's any discussion, please raise your hand. Councilmember Clark.
Thank you. I just want to point out that these letters are very thorough, and they cover the things that we have designated in the tree preservation plan as being important. But I think we need to really look at this because we need to learn our lesson from this project, that we need to update that tree preservation plan in the worst way. It's, we need to do it post haste, because this has been an issue since I got on the council. We've talked about updating this tree preservation plan. And now we get to the point where we're meeting the plan, yet even according to these 2 letters that we've got from the arborists, we see that we needed it to be more thorough and that we've left out some things. So I just encourage all of us and the city staff to update this before we get into another project like this.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Clark, and perhaps maybe after the motion, we can ask if that's something that could be brought before a committee to look at and begin that work. Councilmember Edens, you had your hands up.
Yes, so I will be voting yes tonight, and I want to explain why, because I've had a lot of documented concerns and that I've spoken about, particularly related to watershed erosion. And I'm coming from the worst watershed in the city, and specifically Cox Creek, and it's something that has the potential to keep me up at night. And I have seen developments in my ward negatively affect other homeowners in a way that has concerning for public safety in the future. And so my job is to be a good steward and to mitigate that and prevent that from the best of my ability and use the lessons I've learned in my ward and other wards, while balancing that with the right for personal property owners to develop their property. And certainly I wasn't around when the original proposals were brought forth to council. We're only responsible for the decisions that we can make, not the past ones. And with the acknowledgement that issues like erosion change drastically, they're changing exponentially with storm events. So that's, not the same as it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 17 years ago. But you have acknowledged that there's a unique situation along this creek bed, and you've done your best to work with that rather than using a cookie cutter approach. And it's probably as good as it's going to get. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate the extra documentation, which is what this council likes to chew through. That's kind of how we work. I appreciated it. Last week, it was just too close to the meeting start time for me to go through. And that was really the hang up that I had. So thank you for going through the extra hoops, because that allows me to sleep better at night. But also I have something I can show a resident when they ask what will happen. So thank you.
Councilmember Rambo.
Yeah, the city needs more density. Town center's the place. These folks have a right to sell their property, and the developers have a right to do whatever they want in compliance with our regulations. I'd caution against the notion that we've moved the goalposts, because at their own volition, the developer redid this, and so the clock started over right before COVID hit. So it hasn't been that long. I would have supported an appropriate target, for example, on that site. Now we've got a subdivision that I have remaining concerns about. I just real quickly run through a couple. We've collectively judged the stormwater concerns as sufficiently addressed. Time will tell. I'm fairly comfortable with the work that's been done. I'm concerned about the aesthetics of these, barren basins that are too steep to walk, but I'm not buying a home in there. So it's, folks will make their own determination. The only remaining aesthetic concern that I have is we have thousands of residents passing on Highway 100 and 109, and we've asked for appropriate renderings that don't show rooftops peeking over dense tree-lined hillsides, because that won't happen for decades, just the way nursery stock works. And so we will be fielding comments from irate residents for a long time to come if we don't get a better handle on that. But the developers said, nah, we're good. We don't need to provide any further renderings. I think it's a mistake if we don't insist on that. So we have to, our job is to take heat for the greater good, but we can see this coming. We have to get a plan we can support that's aesthetically okay for the bulk of our residents. So the tree preservation plan.
I agree myself with the other arborists that have assessed this. Loomis accurately defined where the woodlands were, and they actually accurately counted the grand trees. That has nothing to do with our expressed concerns. And the arborist's conclusions echo my own. It's inaccurate and it's unwise to assess forest trees as if they're standalone yard specimens. And even so, several of the limited subset of identified grand trees are doomed to die in the planned excavation tree wells. And so by any number of modern, fair, and reasonable tree quality standards, there are 2 to 3 times as many on-site grand trees as we're contemplating in this plan. We asked them to rework it. Nothing has happened. And so it's my understanding that the city is revising the tree standards, and those revised standards are a month or 2 away from our approval. That ought to correct such deficiencies. I don't know if some of the folks that support this have really read the arborist reports, because they are not as favorable at all as everyone is, as some folks seem to be assuming that they are. And so I want to ask the planning department to expand on the arborist opinions answer that was given last time, because I think it was misleading in the interest of brevity. That 2 arborists agree that this was a great job. Mr. Vunich spoke to that a little bit. I'd like to ask a little bit for a little bit more detail, and then suggest that we ask again for a tree plan that complies with the spirit of our ordinances, the actual opinions of our arborists, and if appropriate, the revisions to these ordinances, as Ms. Clark mentioned, that are probably going to be delivered in weeks, because this place is going to be here for a long time. And so, Joe, could you address that, please?
With the permission of Mayor Pro Tem.
Please.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of the City Council, as you recall, Mayor Boland requested that the department respond to a question. Does the tree preservation comply with our current regulations? The department said yes. And those are referenced in the 2 letters from the arborist. It was a matter of brevity, but as you can see from the attached letters, both of the certified arborists went into great detail about the shortcomings of our tree manual and how it is applied to this particular site. I believe in one of them, Mr. Halpin mentions that there's 21 additional grand trees that he had identified as part of his walk of the property. Certainly, the department is aware of the shortcomings of our tree manual. That tree manual was actually developed by a certified arborist, a very familiar name at that time, Skip Kincaid. And at that time, it was on the cutting edge of what was being done in this particular area. So certainly it has not been updated. It is under updates right now. The Planning and Zoning Commission saw it a week ago this Monday, and they will be working on it for the next month or 2 before it is forwarded for consideration by the City Council. But again, I just thought it was important that you see the letters from the 2 certified arborists so you could see the details and not just depend on a short answer from the department. Thank you.
So some of these trees are going to fail, and there's only a few of them. And so if we're just going to live a handful of trees in the middle of fields as though there's street trees and put them in wells, they're not going to be successful. And so I have suggested repeatedly that we get a real legitimate assessment of the actual trees and what we can do to preserve them. We haven't done that. We're evidently not going to do that. And I think that's a mistake. But the developer has done what they think they need to do to get this passed. And it doesn't go down real well for me. So, but I will say that it's appropriate for us to insist on at least getting the requested renderings before we make an incompletely informed decision concerning the visual appearance from the road, because if you look at the topology of the site, you're going to be looking at nothing but houses where there was formerly nothing but trees. And maybe that's okay, but this is our main intersection. And I just continue to feel we can do better. Maybe it's as simple as a few larger nursery stock, larger caliper trees or something like that. But I think we have to do something. And so I'm going to move that we insist on the requested renderings at least before we make an incompletely informed decision.
All right. All right, then, thank you, Councilmember Flasher.
Yeah, so we have code, we have regulations. They have spent a heck of a lot of time meeting that code, meeting those regulations. I think that there's no way you can say no at this point. This is what we asked them to do. They've done it.
But they haven't.
They've done what we asked them to do. They've done what the city asked them to do. Whether it's what you or whoever else wants to ask them to do is another story, but that's beside the point. They've met everything that we've asked them to do as a city. We put them through the ringer. As the sellers have said, it's been since 1988. To me, that's unbelievable. And I'm sorry that's happened, honestly. I want to make the motion to move this forward because it's kind of disgusting to me how long this has taken for them, especially since they've met everything that we put in front of them.
The bill's on the floor right now, so we'll be having a roll call shortly. Councilmember Brost.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna vote in favor of it. I think I've heard a lot up here tonight. Some of it's the same that we hear each time. We all have concerns. I actually think having concerns is a good thing. If we all remain concerned and focused, I think we're gonna have a better product. So we don't go into this in a vacuum. The city's going to be involved. And I would say, yeah, let's all stay concerned. I think we're going to have a great product and a great result. All the answers, just from a cost standpoint, can't all be settled at this stage of the project. It's got to develop, and there's a process for that. And Lauren, I'm sorry you had sleepless nights. And I'm also sorry the owners have had sleepless nights. It's been a burden on them. Is the world perfect? No, but it's time to move forward, and I'm going to support this. Thank you.
Councilmember Galani.
Yeah, I just want to echo the sentiment as well. And obviously I've spoken on this specific topic before, but I agree with what's been said already. Obviously, I plan to support this. This has been going on for far too long, and appreciate everything the developer's done and the property owners, the patience and perseverance and working with the city to move this forward. And at the end of the day, having concerns like Councilmember Brost mentioned is always a good thing. And having concerns about updating parts of our code or regulations is something that can be done and looked at in the future, but you can't backtrack or try to scramble to get things done while you're in the middle of a process that's been 7+ years in the making. That's not the way government's supposed to work. And that's not the way that you do the people's work here. So future projects, great. But the other thing about this, to reiterate, we talked about this at the last meeting, this isn't an end all be all, by the way. I mean, this is just to move the site development plan forward. They'll still be going in front of P&Z and requesting permits and with the department or whatnot. So it's not like they're going to be breaking ground tomorrow on this. So and at the end of the day, however many conditions have been proposed by the city have all been agreed to. So to Councilmember Flasher's point, I don't know how you can vote no to push something forward when the developer has agreed to accommodate 100% of what the city has asked them to do. And per the department's recommendation, they are in full compliance with all code and regulation that the city of Wildwood has in place. So by virtue of that alone, I too agree that it's time to move this forward and allow these folks to sell their property and allow the development to take place, and something that I think will make this part of the city look a lot better. And it is a high density zoned area as well. So anyway, that's all I got.
All right, thank you. I don't see any other hands up. So at this point, then we'll call the roll for final passage.
Don't we have a motion on the floor?
No,
Yeah, I
No.
made one before.
There is no second. Well, we have one right now on the floor, so
What's that?
we have the bill is on the floor right now.
And we had second meeting.
This is a second
Okay.
reading, yeah. So, city attorney, right? We have the bill on the floor. I don't think we can entertain any other motion at this point, right?
Well, the second readings occurred, which means amendments would be appropriate at this time,
Okay,
or a motion to postpone or other motions would be appropriate.
all right. I didn't see a second before, so I'm assuming then there isn't anything on the floor at this time, so therefore we can call the roll unless there's,
I'm just interested in getting what we asked for instead of being stonewalled. It hasn't been 7 years. It certainly hasn't been 20. It's been since COVID started. And we asked for renderings of actual reality after grading is completed, not 20 years down the road. And we asked for a little bit better handle on the tree preservation. That may get cleaned up in the next phase of this. I'm okay with the drainage stuff. I just think we deserve to see what residents are going to be seeing for the next 20 years at the busiest intersection in Wildwood. That's the only thing I'm asking for. So I don't know if it's appropriate to make an amendment or if it's appropriate to say postpone. I don't think there's any.
well, let me refer if Director Vunich maybe can explain. I'm gonna assume that might be part of the site development plan process, and that might answer some questions, but I don't want to speak on behalf of Director Vunich.
Well, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of the council, certainly as we move into the site development plan process, we'll begin to get more and more specific information relative to all aspects of the project. So I feel comfortable the concerns that have been expressed have been heard by George Stock of Stock and Associates, Mr. Saunders of Loomis Associates. So I think we'll get off on a good step and hopefully be able to save more trees than less. With regards to the renderings, typically that's not something that's a component of the site development plan that comes with the architectural elevations, but that's just for the dwellings themselves, not necessarily the site. So the department would suggest if that is something that's critical to the city council, that be part or an amendment to the current motion or something akin that Mr. Young would agree is appropriate.
Is that reasonable to ask, sir?
You can certainly make motions to amend the bill as presented to add new conditions to the rezoning.
Okay, so I would like to move that we get those renderings from various points or a couple of points on Highway 100 and Highway 109 as specified. The department has already written up the specifications for those requests, and we haven't seen any.
Okay, so you're making an amendment then. Is there someone that would second that amendment? Councilmember Farmer. All right, the amendment's on the floor. Any discussion on the amendment? Oh, City Attorney Young.
Could I ask, just for clarification, the amendment was the intent that it be done before approval of the site development plan, the administrative approval by the P and Z?
Well, I don't know how much everybody seems to want to, most folks seem to want to move this forward. I'm tired of talking about it myself. But I want to at least have us know when what it's going to look like. And if we can't do anything about it, then there's no sense in making them go jump through that hoop. But if we have some way to affect that with enhanced plantings or larger plantings or just whatever, then it makes sense to do it. And so the does that explain the situation better?
I think so. I'm just thinking from a timing perspective of what you're wanting them to accomplish. The condition would be that it would be presented at the time of the approval of the site development plan. I'd ask Mr. Vunich if he agrees with that assessment.
Yes, Mr. Young, I do. Thank you.
Hey, Director Vunich, is that already part of the site development process, or do you feel that the amendment needs to be included here?
Typically, we do not require the type of renderings I believe Council Member Rambo is requesting as part of the site development plan process. So I do believe it needs to be an amendment if the majority of City Council would like to have it. Thank you.
Yeah, we have renderings. They just don't reflect immediate reality. They reflect long-term hopes for future conditions. So yeah, I'd like to make that amendment.
Okay, so you're making that amendment. Councilmember Farmer, is your second still stand? Okay, any questions on the amendment on the floor? Director Vunich, just may I ask if that's an amendment that is reasonable from the department's perspective?
Certainly, the renderings that were provided for tonight's meeting were generated by the petitioner. I think, again, we could do what Mr. Rambo is requesting with 3 or 4 more.
Okay, so therefore we do have that amendment on the floor. Any other question or discussion then on the amendment that Councilmember Rambo and seconded by Councilmember Farmer has made? Otherwise, Councilmember Farmer, you wish to speak?
Yeah, I'm happy to second the motion. I hope that we can certainly see that in the planning phase. I'm under no assumption that that's going to pass. I think that I'm probably going to be in the minority this evening, in that I appreciate all the work that the city has done, the developers have done, the owners have done. You guys have been wonderful citizens of the city of Wildwood for a long time, and certainly have been put through a lot of different ringers by a lot of different people. I actually have to say I agree with everything everybody said up here, but I'm personally not going to be able to support this. I'll be in the minority, I think, on that, because I am the chair of the Watershed Erosion Task Force, and I am oftentimes confronted with multiple tens of millions of dollars of problems that we're dealing with based on subdivisions that were developed by people that all had, I like to believe they all had good intentions. I don't think anybody thought they were going to make something that was going to create the problems that it has. I don't think you folks are doing that either. I think you've done everything you can possibly do to today's standards, which is what everybody did 30 years ago, and that puts us where we are today. So for myself, I am hopeful. We need more residents in Wildwood. We need new residents in Town Center. I'm all for it. I can't support this in the way it's conceived right now. I just think it's going to turn around and bite us big time down the road.
Okay, again, this is just on the amendment, so
Yeah.
I
So
don't see any.
if we can get those pictures, I think it's going to be great. We've got that issue that goes on across the street. We get a lot of questions about Brightleaf and what that looks like, and those things. Again, everybody works with their best intentions, but being honest, those trees in that rendering on page 14, they don't look like that today. They're not going to look like that tomorrow or in 5 years when the stuff is built. So knowing what we're getting into is good. Letting the citizens see what it's going to be is better.
Okay, Councilmember Flasher on the amendment.
Yeah, I guess I don't understand how seeing what that looks like changes the fact that they've met all the regulations and stuff that we put forth. I just don't know. I mean, even if it looks horrible, they've met the code and the regulations that we've set forth. So there's really, I guess I'm confused as to what that solves or what that changes. I guess that's my question, or I'm just putting that out there. I mean, what is that solving? What is that changing for everybody? For me, it changes nothing because they've still met all of our regulations and stuff.
All right, I don't see any other discussions, so roll call on the amendment.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Nian,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
No.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
No.
Councilmember Garitano,
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
No.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
No.
Councilmember Dodwell,
No.
Councilmember Bertolino,
No.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani.
No.
Okay, the motion, the amendment passes. Now back to the bill on the floor. There isn't any other discussion then. We have the bill on the floor, Bill 2765, and City Clerk, do you have a question? Okay,
So if we pass this now, then it's passed with the amendment that just happened. If we don't pass this now, we're saying that they can't keep going in this process?
City Attorney, you want to answer that?
If you reject the bill, then the rezoning request is rejected.
If we want just to move forward for them, we need to say yes at this point,
Correct.
and we'll just have to deal with the amendment that just got passed.
The amendment will be in the bill.
Yeah, whether we like it or not. Okay,
Correct.
cool.
All right, Councilmember Rambo.
Yeah, this is a very quick procedural question. If the department gets its revised, updated standards completed, if they should get them completed before final passage of this bill or any other bill, are those then in place and in effect for any projects that haven't been approved by council, or do the projects that haven't been finally approved have get grandfathered or something?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
I'm
tracking.
asking about the if the let's say the tree planting gets modified.
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
Before final passage, second reading, what you want to call it. How does that work? And that's just
Sure,
an
sure.
academic-
So it is somewhat a fact specific question, or it's going to be fact specific. The general rule in Missouri for vested right, which we commonly call grandfathering, the vested rule and the general rule on vested right is once spade is put into ground, you cannot change the law out from under them. But until that time, it can be.
So then this could still be corrected if the council had the stomach that they don't seem to have.
Potentially. Yeah. Again, it'd be a very, very fact specific analysis of where things stand at that time.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. I don't see any other hands up. So therefore, City Clerk Eldridge, can you do the roll call?
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Nian,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
No.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
No.
Councilmember Fleischer.
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano,
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens.
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
And the bill passes.
Would someone please provide to the individuals what their next steps are?
I'll defer to Director Vunich. Did you hear that request by Councilmember Dodwell? If you could advise what are the next steps? Are you referring to the petitioner, or are you talking about?
The petitioner, what are the next steps
Okay.
in the process that they have to go through in order to comply with what we voted on?
Director Vunich, do you want to speak to that now, or do you want to follow up with that request that Councilmember Dodwell just mentioned?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, if it's okay with you as the Mayor Pro Tem and the City Council, I'll put a little schedule together and send it out via email, and I'll include the petitioner in it.
Okay, so Councilmember Dodwell, does that work for you?
I want to ensure that the owners of the property know what their next steps need to be based upon the conversation and what we just voted on.
Sounds like then Director Vunich will document that. Councilmember Fleischer.
In theory, is it possible for us to move this forward next month then based off of what we just decided, or is this gonna like prolong it?
No, the second reading just took place.
Yeah.
So
So it's with the conditions of them sending in the renderings first, right?
No, that would be.
Once they do that, then we're good to go. Okay.
Okay.
I got another question. So if it's already moving forward, what's the point of getting the renderings in the first place?
The amendment.
That's for the people who said yes. I'm asking that question to people that just said yes, I guess.
Oh, well, right now, I think debate's closed on the bill here, but City Attorney Young, do you want to go ahead and speak to that?
Right. There are additional administrative approvals that have to take place now, and that amendment now becomes part of those administrative approvals.
Hence my question.
Okay, so looks like a lot of good discussion on this bill here. So thank you. And we're going to move on to Bill 2766 before the council for final passage and concerns Ward 8. Is there a motion for the second reading of the bill? Councilmember Galani, is there a second? Councilmember Farmer. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstain? All right, Ms. Eldridge, please read the bill.
Bill number 2766, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing a change in the zoning district designation of a 0.72 acre property located on the east side of Etherton Road, north of its intersection with Crestview Drive, from the NU non-urban residence district to the R3 10,000 square foot residence district. Second reading.
All right, Director Vunich, do you have anything to add?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, the bill has not been altered since its introduction, and the department is available for any questions or comments.
All right, Bill 2766 is on the floor for discussion. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, then Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage.
Councilmember Nian. Yes. Councilmember Farmer.
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo.
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garitano.
Yes.
Councilmember Brost.
Yes.
Councilmember Edens.
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino. Councilmember Jaxi. I didn't hear
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Councilmember Galani. Councilmember Galani.
He spoke for me. Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni.
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino.
Yes.
Okay, bill passes. Thank you. All right, moving on to new business. Bill 2768.
I have a question.
Oh, we have a question. All right, Councilmember Dodwell.
I know I'm being a pest this evening, but when I went to look at this particular bill that we just passed, none of the background information was with it at all. None of the renderings or drawings or any of the property line information, nothing from past discussions that we've had on this was present in this agenda. And I thought we had voted a year ago that we would augment each agenda with everything that was pertaining to that topic that needed to be available to the public. So it's just me being picky right now. I don't understand why we can't continue to do that moving forward, Mr. Vunich.
Director Vunich, would you like to respond, please?
Ms. Dodwell, I'll have to defer to the city clerk. Ms. Eldridge prepares the agenda, and Mr. Newberry, I believe, provides that background information. And we've done that in the past, so I can't explain this particular situation. I'm sorry.
I don't recall getting anything attached to the bill.
Okay, so thank you. Point taken. Appreciate that. And I think everyone's heard that. And so we'll make sure that information, that background info that you have asked is included. All right, we're going to move on to new business. So Bill 2768 is before the council for is before the council for first reading and concerns all wards. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill made by Council Member Farmer? Is there a second? Made by Council Member Dodwell. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? All right, Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2768.
Bill number 2768, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, amending section 420.090E of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Wildwood by deleting it in its entirety, enacting in lieu thereof a new section 420.090E, and providing for the time frame for recording an approved record plat. First reading.
All right, Director Vunich, do you have anything to add to the information that's been provided to council?
No, sir, but the department's available for any comments or questions.
All right, any questions or comments at this time? All right, seeing none, then this bill will be on the agenda for next meeting. All right, we'll move on. Next bill 2769 is before the council for first reading and concerns Ward 1. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Bros, seconded by Councilmember Clark. All in favor, please say aye. Anyone oppose or abstain? All right, Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2769.
Bill number 2769, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing a change in zoning from the PS Park and Scenic District to the NU Non-Urban Residence District for a property that is 4.36 acres in size, located on the north side of Rieger Road, west of its intersection with Wild Horse Creek Road, locator number 24X440070, street address 18443 Rieger Road. First reading.
Director Vunich, do you have anything to add to the information that's already been provided to the council?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of City Council, during public participation at tonight's meeting, the property owner requested a second reading and the department has no objection. As noted, the property is over 3 acres in size, was originally owned by the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. They sold it for private purposes, and it is a legal non-conforming lot, and this would correct that legality and would allow the petitioner, the property owner, to proceed forward with improvements to the site. Thank you.
Is there a motion for the second reading of the bill made by Councilmember Clark, seconded by Councilmember Brost? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? All right, Ms. Eldridge, please read the bill again, 2769.
Bill number 2769, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing a change in zoning from the PS Park and Scenic District to the NU Non-Urban Residence District for a property that is 4.36 acres in size, located on the north side of Rieger Road, west of its intersection with Wild Horse Creek Road, locator number 24X440070, street address 18443 Rieger Road, second reading.
All right, the bill is on the floor for discussion. Is there any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, then Ms. Eldridge, please go ahead and call roll for final passage.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garitano,
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani, Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Nian.
Yes.
The bill passes. All right, moving on next to Bill 2770 is before the council for first reading and concerns Ward 8. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Galani. Is there a second by Councilmember Farmer? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed or abstain? All right, Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2770.
Bill number 2770, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to enter into an amended contract with DJM Ecological Services Incorporated for the completion of the pedestrian bridge and trail segments in the Manors at the Meadows of Cherry Hills, as indicated in the bid documents and specifications, which includes all change orders. First reading.
Director Vunich, do you have anything to add to the information that's already been provided to council?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of City Council, the Planning and Parks Committee was presented the final change order relative to this particular project at its meeting in January and endorsed it. Tonight, the bill reflects that recommendation from the committee, and if there are any questions, the department would be glad to try to answer them at this time. Thank you.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Does this need a second reading this evening?
Ms. Dodwell, I would appreciate it very much, so thank you for asking.
Okay, there a motion for the second reading made by Councilmember Dodwell. Is there a second by Councilmember Ottenberg? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2770.
Bill number 2770, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to enter into an amended contract with DJM Ecological Services Incorporated for the completion of the pedestrian bridge and trail segments in the Manors at the Meadows of Cherry Hills, as indicated in the bid documents and specifications, which includes all change orders. Second reading.
Any discussion or questions? All right, seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yeah.
Councilmember Rambo.
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garitano.
Aye.
Councilmember Bros.
Yes.
Councilmember Edens.
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino.
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi.
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Nian,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer.
Yes.
Okay, bill passes. All right, Bill 2771 is before the council for first reading and concerns all wards. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Dodwell. Is there a second? Councilmember Clark. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? All right, Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2771.
Bill number 2771, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a city contract agreement with Kelp Contracting Incorporated for the FY 2023 concrete street and sidewalk replacement project, including other incidental items as shown on the project bid documents first reading.
All right, Director Brown, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Just a couple brief items, if that's all right. I did want to mention to the council, I will do my best to provide you of a list of subdivisions and related amount of concrete street work that we do have planned, so you have an idea of what is proposed, and I will do that prior to the second reading of this bill. And that secondly, since Tom Kelp is the low bidder again, I wanted to mention that he tells me that they will be in Wildwood in the springtime after they have completed work for the city of Winchester. So we're expecting them to be working for us later in the spring, and we will of course keep you apprised of their schedule when it becomes more firm. And with that, I'll certainly take any questions.
All right, are there any questions for Director Brown? All right, the bill will be on the agenda for the next meeting. All right, Bill 2772 is before the council for first reading and concerns wards 1 and 6. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Clark, seconded by Councilmember Brost. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? All right, Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2772.
Bill number 2772, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a city consultant agreement with George Butler Associates Incorporated, doing business as GBA, to complete a traffic and conceptual engineering study for a capital improvement project to construct J-turns on State Route 100 at the intersections of Pond Road and State Route T, St. Albans Road within the city, first reading.
Okay. Director Brown, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. No, I have nothing additional, but I'm available for any questions from the city council.
Are there any questions? All right, seeing none, then this bill will be on the agenda for the next meeting. All right, moving on to Bill 2773 is before the council for first reading and concerns wards 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, and 8. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Dodwell, seconded by Councilmember Edens. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2773.
Bill number 2773, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a city contract agreement with Go Green Lawn and Landscape LLC for the maintenance of certain landscape areas within the city, first reading.
All right, Director Brown, do you have anything to add?
I do not, but again, I'm available for any questions from the city council.
Are there any questions? All right, the bill will be on the agenda for the next meeting.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the agenda, we do not have any first readings from hearings with favorable city recommendations. We'll proceed to resolutions. So resolution, let's see, 2023-4 is before the council and concerns all wards. We did get a request from the public comment, and just speaking on behalf, if I have the privilege to speak as Chair of Admin Public Works, I would support postponement so we can get that language corrected there. So, Councilmember Flasher.
Can we amend that tonight so it can move forward, or does it need to be postponed to kind of fix it? I'm just asking.
Great question. I think the city attorney might need to work with the director specific to that language. All right, so do we need a motion to postpone city attorney, or?
A motion to postpone would be appropriate.
Okay, so a motion to postpone by Councilmember Farmer and seconded by Councilmember 9 of resolution 2023-4. Do we have to make it with time certain, or is it just
I think you could say the next meeting.
to the next meeting? So motion to postpone to the next meeting. for resolution 2023-4, made by Councilmember Farmer, seconded by Councilmember Nye. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? Okay, well, you have one oppose. Do you have to read that or? No.
No, he introduced it when he announced it.
All right, moving on then, resolution 2023-5 is before the council and concerns Ward 1. Is there a motion to adopt resolution 2023-5? Made by Councilmember Bros, seconded by Councilmember Clark. Ms. Eldridge, please read the resolution.
Resolution number 2023-5, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, approving the postponement of the bridge number 387 replacement project on Wild Horse Creek Road over Wild Horse Creek near Austin Fort Road, and a rescission of the Federal Surface Transportation Program funding agreement.
Right, Director Brown, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Garetano. I just would mention briefly, if that's okay, this resolution is consistent with the discussion at Edmond Public Works a couple months ago. Council members, you may recall, we did apply last week for federal funding for this very bridge and the adjacent bridge number 386. So the idea is to try to reapply for federal funding, but to do that, we also essentially have to postpone the project and then rescind the current agreement that is in place with MoDOT. So that is the intent behind the resolution, just to document that decision by the city council so we can move forward with that action. With that, I am available for any questions.
All right, thank you. We have resolution 2023-5 on the floor. Councilmember Edens.
Yes, Mr. Brown, can you just go into a little bit more detail for the benefit of Mr. Lawrence, who is still in attendance, bless him for still being here, on the difficulties that we're facing with the easement acquisitions?
Well, the situation is that to construct the project, we are required to obtain at least temporary easements from Babbler State Park. And Babbler State Park at one time, when it was improved, used federal funding called Land and Water Conservation Funds. And these funds essentially deed restrict the park property, and it controls the state's ability to grant easements. Essentially, they have to get permission from the federal government. And because of that fact, it adds another layer of bureaucracy into the whole project. And the process is somewhat involved, and it just takes some time to work through with the federal government, quite frankly. And the reality is the federal funds that we receive from East West Gateway are relatively short in term in nature, and they want to get you through the progress and building projects within a 3-year time frame. And when you're facing a 2-year potential delay, or up to that amount of delay on the federal level, it just doesn't make it practical. So that's why we're postponing the project, hopefully, and then reapplying for the federal funds, again, with East West Gateway, to allow us time to work through that process with the federal government.
May I just follow up and say that anything that you can do as part of your services for cities and constituents to keep that process from taking a full 24 months, because this is public safety, would be very appreciated. And you have excellent timing for the agenda tonight.
Any other questions or discussion on the floor? All right, seeing none then. All in favor of the motion to adopt, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? All right, the motion to adopt the resolution passes.
Thank you.
Did anyone oppose or abstain? All right, I don't see any. All right, moving on then, we have the consent agenda. There are 2 items on the consent agenda: the approval of the January 9th, 2023 work session and regular meeting minutes, and the approval of the expenditures. So if everyone is okay with that, we can approve the consent agenda if anyone wants to remove an item. All right, seeing none, can I get a motion for approval of the consent agenda made by Councilmember Ottenberg, seconded by Councilmember Nye? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? All right, now we'll move on to miscellaneous. Is there anything under miscellaneous that anyone wishes to speak of? Councilmember Edens.
Yes, I would just like to say thank you to the police department. There's been increased policing on Clayton Road, and it's been noted by constituents. So thank you.
All right, Councilmember Farmer.
Yeah, I don't know if we can still do this, but I'm wondering if we're next up on the concrete pouring. Do we need to do a second reading on that bill since we don't have another meeting until the middle of March?
Director Brown, do you want to answer that question?
Councilmember Farmer, I appreciate it. I think based on what I said with Tom Kelp's work preceding us in Winchester, I got the impression that we're fine, that if we wait till March, he has work to do in Winchester, and then by the time we give him notice to proceed, he'll be closer to working in Wildwood. So I think we're good there. Thank you, though.
Anything else under miscellaneous? All right, I'll just say thanks again for bearing with me, and thank you for the honor to do this for you tonight. So seeing that there is no other miscellaneous, a motion for adjournment made by Councilmember Farmer, seconded by Councilmember Flasher. Motion is non-debatable. Please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed or abstaining. Meeting